The air hung thick and humid over the African savanna, a heavy blanket of expectation and dread. In a dense thicket, barely visible against the dappled sunlight, a form stirred, sleek, black, and utterly terrifying. A black panther, Nala, was cornered, her eyes, usually pools of obsidian calm, now darting with frantic intensity. They flickered between the looming figure of a human, a veterinarian, and the tiny, vulnerable bundle nestled protectively beneath her jaw. The unspoken question hung heavy in the stifling heat. In these next 4 critical seconds, would she maul the human threat, or stand as an impenetrable shield between him and her beloved cub? This agonizing dilemma was the grim reality facing Dr. Evelyn Reed. An American wildlife veterinarian, Evelyn was a force of nature herself, driven by an unyielding dedication to conservation. Her striking blonde hair was usually pulled back in a practical, no-nonsense ponytail, now slightly damp with perspiration. She headed a specialized team at a remote sanctuary nestled deep within East Africa, a place where the wild reigned supreme and human intervention was a delicate, often dangerous, dance. Known for her unparalleled expertise in big cat care, Evelyn had faced down charging rhinos, wrestled with sedated lions, and performed intricate surgeries in the most rudimentary of conditions. Her courage was legendary, her commitment unwavering, forged through years of challenging animal interventions that had often pushed her to the very brink. Today, however, felt different. Nala, a notoriously reclusive black panther, had recently given birth. Her cub, barely a few weeks old, was exhibiting alarming signs of a dangerous infection. Labored breathing, listlessness, and a fever Evelyn knew could turn fatal within hours. Immediate medical intervention was not just crucial, it was life or death. But Nala, driven by a primal, fierce protectiveness, had hidden her tiny offspring deep within this impenetrable thicket, making access for the veterinary team a perilous proposition, akin to walking into a well-laid trap. The cub's condition was deteriorating with terrifying speed. Every passing minute chipped away at their narrow window of opportunity. The sanctuary manager, an older, weathered local named Juma, observed the unfolding drama with a furrowed brow, his seasoned eyes reflecting grave concern. He had witnessed Nala's aggression before, citing past incidents with other big cats, lions, and leopards when their offspring had been perceived to be threatened. "She is a mother, Doc," he had warned earlier, his voice low and solemn, "and a mother will stop at nothing." The formidable setting certainly amplified the challenge. The African savanna stretched endlessly around them, a landscape of breathtaking beauty and brutal indifference. The relentless sun beat down, turning the air into a shimmering haze. Beyond Nala, the rustling grasses hinted at unseen dangers. Venomous snakes, territorial buffalo, or even rival predators. The sheer unpredictability of wild creatures meant that even the most meticulously planned interventions could unravel in an instant. This was not a zoo, nor a controlled environment. This was the untamed heart of Africa, demanding respect, caution, and an almost reckless bravery. As Evelyn surveyed the scene, her mind raced, calculating risks, weighing options. This wasn't merely about saving a cub. It was about honoring the delicate balance of this ecosystem, about protecting a species on the brink. This commitment was why she, and countless others, dedicated their lives to this work. If these stories of dedication and raw wilderness inspire you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more compelling wildlife narratives and incredible feats of conservation. Back at their makeshift base, Evelyn assembled her small, highly skilled team. Javier, Her quiet, eagle-eyed tracker, and Lena, the always prepared veterinary assistant, awaited her instructions. They discussed various strategies to tranquilize Nala without endangering her, the cub, or themselves. The ethical dilemmas were stark. How much stress could they inflict on Nala without pushing her into a full-blown attack? How could they get close enough to administer medicine to the cub without becoming targets themselves? Each proposed solution, each carefully considered step, was fraught with danger, a deadly chess match played against the clock, with the life of a tiny black panther cub hanging precariously in the balance. The team, a small contingent of highly trained individuals, began their first approach with extreme caution. The hum of their reconnaissance drone a faint, barely audible whisper against the vast backdrop of the African plains. Dr. Reed, her eyes fixed on the live feed from the drone's camera, watched intently as the mechanical bird navigated the dense thicket Nala had chosen as her den. The screen flickered, then resolved into a clear image. Nala, a sleek obsidian shadow pacing restlessly near a cluster of thorny bushes. Her movements were sharp, precise, a coiled spring of predatory power. She wasn't merely walking, she was a sentinel, her sleek head swiveling, her ears twitching, picking up every subtle disturbance in the air, every distant rustle of leaves. She growled intermittently, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated even through the drone's audio, a clear warning to any encroaching presence. Her primal instinct to protect her cub was not just a challenge, it was a formidable, intelligent obstacle. Nala was no mindless beast driven solely by aggression. She was a mother, imbued with an ancient wisdom, her actions a complex tapestry of territorial defense, unyielding vigilance, and an almost preternatural awareness of her surroundings. Her ferocity, therefore, wasn't just a threat, but a testament to the depth of her maternal love, making her all the more unpredictable and dangerous. Several attempts to lure Nala away with bait proved fruitless. They had tried placing freshly killed impala meat strategically 100 yards from the den, hoping her hunger would override her protective instincts, even momentarily. But Nala remained unyielding, her focus unwavering from the thicket where her precious cub lay hidden. Each time a team member cautiously moved the bait closer, her growls intensified, a clear signal that she would not abandon her post. Dr. Reed considered a dart gun, a tranquilizer designed to sedate Nala quickly. However, the risk was astronomical. Sedating Nala while she was still so close to the cub presented a terrifying scenario. If she collapsed on the tiny infant, it could be crushed. Worse, a partially sedated, disoriented panther could lash out erratically, turning its immense power on the team in a drugged frenzy. The potential for catastrophic error was too high, forcing them to abandon that immediate course of action. Dr. Reed felt the familiar gnawing ache of internal struggle. Her dedication to saving every creature she encountered clashed violently with the immense risk these situations posed to her team, and indeed to Nala herself. She remembered the near-fatal encounter with a territorial lioness in Botswana, the agonizing decision to amputate a rhino's leg after a poacher's snare, the countless times she had pushed her own limits and those of her colleagues for the sake of an animal. Each memory was a stark reminder of the fragile line between intervention and disaster. This wasn't merely a medical procedure, it was a desperate negotiation with raw, untamed nature. The urgency escalated with every passing moment. Through the drone's sensitive microphone, the cub's whimpers became audibly weaker, fainter, a chilling testament to its rapidly deteriorating condition. Each tiny, desperate cry was a hammer blow to Dr. Reed's resolve, solidifying the terrifying reality that time was slipping away. The sanctuary manager, his face etched with concern, reiterated the dire need for swift intervention, his words echoing the silent plea of the ailing cub. "Evelyn," he'd said, his voice grave, "we are running out of time. That cub, it won't last much longer without help." Dr. Reed began to consider alternative methods, her mind racing through every non-lethal deterrent, every specialized piece of equipment in their mobile clinic. A sonic device to briefly disorient Nala, a specialized net designed for quick capture. Each idea was immediately met with a counter-argument of its own inherent dangers, the potential for unintended harm, or the impracticality of deployment in such a confined, unpredictable space. The sheer intelligence and protective instinct of Nala rendered conventional approaches obsolete, leaving Dr. Reed grappling with a problem that demanded a solution as unique and formidable as the Panther herself. Dr. Reed knew the conventional methods had failed, leaving only one incredibly high-stakes option. The cub's fading whimpers were a gut-wrenching soundtrack to her decision-making process. There was no time for further cautious, indirect attempts. A direct confrontation, meticulously planned and executed, was their last resort. She devised a bold strategy, a coordinated two-pronged approach. One team member would create a decisive, brief diversion, pulling Nala's focus away for mere seconds. In that fleeting window, Dr. Reed herself would attempt to administer a fast-acting, low-dose sedative to Nala. The objective wasn't full sedation. That was too risky given Nala's proximity to her cub and the unpredictable collapse it might induce. Instead, the dart aimed to temporarily disorient Nala, to dull her razor-sharp reflexes and overwhelming protective instincts just enough to allow crucial access to the sick cub. It was an audacious gamble, relying on precision, timing, and an intimate understanding of Panther behavior. The team gathered, their faces etched with a mixture of grim determination and palpable apprehension. Dr. Reed's voice, though calm, carried an undercurrent of urgency as she meticulously reviewed the plan. "Mark, you'll be on diversion. A controlled explosion, enough to startle but not harm, placed just beyond Nala's line of sight, perhaps 200 meters. The moment she reacts, I move. Jonas, you'll be my spotter, covering my flank, and ready with the emergency tranquilizer if things go sideways. But only if." Every step, every contingency was discussed, dissected, and rediscussed. The silence in the briefing tent was heavy, broken only by the rustle of maps and the low murmur of Dr. Reed's instructions. Safety protocols were not just emphasized. They were drilled, each team member knowing their role and the immense risks involved. No one doubted Dr. Reed's judgment, forged in countless previous life-or-death situations. Yet the sheer audacity of this plan hung in the air like the oppressive savanna heat. This wasn't just about the cub. It was about the well-being of Nala, and indeed, their own lives. Under the deepening shadows of late afternoon, the team moved into position. The savanna, usually teeming with life, seemed to hold its breath. They utilized every available piece of natural cover: the gnarled roots of an ancient baobab, the dense thicket of acacia, the undulating contours of the terrain. Each step was calculated, each rustle of dry leaves sounding like a thunderclap in the oppressive quiet. The tension was a tangible shroud, pressing down on them. The distant cry of a raptor, the rhythmic chirping of cicadas, the low, resonant rumble of an elephant herd far off. These usual sounds of the African bush now seemed amplified, lending an almost surreal atmosphere to their perilous approach. Nala, however, was no ordinary creature. She was an apex predator, her senses honed to an impossible degree. Even through the careful, stealthy movements of the team, she sensed their presence. Her initial low growls, previously intermittent, now became more frequent, more intense, reverberating through the air like a warning drum. Her magnificent black coat, almost invisible in the encroaching twilight, provided perfect camouflage. But her eyes, those piercing emerald lamps, were constantly scanning, darting between shadows, searching for the source of the subtle disturbance. They seemed to glow in the dappled light filtering through the sparse canopy, reflecting an ancient, primal vigilance. Then came the diversion. Mark, positioned far to the north, triggered the charge. A sharp, concussive crump echoed across the savannah, followed by a momentary flurry of disturbed birds. For a split second, Nala's head snapped towards the sound, her ears swiveling, her body tensing, instincts momentarily overriding her focus on the immediate threat. That was Dr. Reed's cue. She moved with the silent grace of a hunter, rising from behind a cluster of thorny bushes that had provided perfect concealment. The dart gun felt heavy, yet strangely weightless in her hands. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drumbeat of adrenaline in her ears. She lined up the shot, her breath held, focusing on Nala's powerful shoulder. The weight of the decision, the lives at stake, the cubs, Nala's, her team's, and her own, rested solely on the precise trajectory of that tiny dart. The moment of truth had arrived. With a silent prayer, Dr. Reed squeezed the trigger. The dart hissed through the air, a whisper against the vast African expanse. Time seemed to stretch, every microsecond elongated as the small projectile arced towards its target. Nala, momentarily distracted by the distant blast, was still turning her head back towards the thicket when the dart found its mark, burying itself with a soft thud into the powerful muscle of her shoulder. It was a perfect hit, precisely where Dr. Reed had intended. A primal roar tore from Nala's throat, a terrifying sound of pure fury and pain that echoed through the bush, sending a shiver down even the most seasoned tracker's spine. It was a sound that spoke of ancient power, of untamed wilderness, and it promised swift, brutal retaliation. For a split second, she whipped her head around, her emerald eyes blazing with raw aggression, fixing on the source of this new, stinging irritation. Her magnificent body coiled, muscles bunching, ready to spring. The sedative began its work almost instantly, a fast-acting, low-dose formula designed to disorient rather than completely incapacitate. Nala stumbled, a subtle, almost imperceptible falter in her powerful stride. Her focus wavered, the world around her blurring at the edges. Her snarl softened into a confused growl, her head shaking as if to clear the sudden fogginess that invaded her senses. It was a minuscule window, perhaps 2 seconds, maybe 3, before her formidable will and instinct would fight through the chemical haze. Seizing this fleeting, perilous opportunity, Dr. Reed's assistant, a nimble local tracker named Django, reacted with lightning speed. He had been poised, a phantom in the shadows, waiting for this exact moment. Armed only with a small, portable medical kit strapped to his chest, he burst from cover, a blur of motion darting towards the dense thicket where the cub was hidden. He moved with the grace and agility of someone intimately familiar with the treacherous terrain, his eyes fixed on the small, whimpering form. He knew he had mere seconds, a heartbeat of time, before Nala's maternal fury would fully reassert itself. The distance felt interminable, every stride a desperate gamble. Django reached the edge of the thicket, his heart hammering against his ribs. He could see the cub now, a tiny, fragile bundle of black fur, shivering and weak. He knelt quickly, his fingers fumbling with the medical kit, his mind racing. Just a quick assessment, a vital sign check, perhaps administer the first dose of antibiotics. He needed to be in and out, a ghost in the wind. But Nala's maternal instincts, honed over millennia, were a force that even the most potent sedatives could only momentarily mask. Though still disoriented, her hazy vision caught the movement, the shape of a foreign presence near her precious offspring. Her growl returned, deeper, more menacing, a visceral warning that vibrated through the ground. The fog in her mind began to lift, replaced by an overwhelming, protective rage. With a sudden, terrifying surge of adrenaline, Nala recovered. She shook off the lingering effects of the dart's impact, her powerful legs propelling her forward. She lunged, a black missile of fur and claws, her jaws snapping. Django, his ears ringing with her renewed roar, reacted on pure instinct. He barely managed to roll away, the sharp claws of Nala's paw tearing through the air where his back had been moments before. He scrambled backward, eyes wide with adrenaline, leaving behind the small medical kit where it had fallen, now a forgotten casualty of the panther's wrath. Nala stood over her cub, panting, her magnificent body a shield, her eyes blazing with an unyielding, dangerous resolve. The brief window had slammed shut, and the situation had just become infinitely more perilous. The cub remained untreated, the danger now magnified tenfold. Nala was now fully enraged, a living embodiment of untamed fury. The small dose of sedative intended to disorient her just enough for a swift intervention had instead backfired spectacularly, fueling her aggression rather than dampening it. Her movements, while perhaps a touch less fluid than in her unhindered state, were now shockingly erratic, making her even more unpredictable and, if possible, more dangerous. She stood fiercely over her whimpering cub, a dark, protective shadow against the fading light, her menacing growls a clear dare to anyone foolish enough to approach. Every muscle was coiled, ready to spring, her eyes burning with an ancient, maternal fire. The assistant's aborted dash and swift retreat meant the cub was still untreated, its fragile life hanging by the thinnest thread. The tiny whimpers, now almost imperceptible, twisted in Dr. Reed's gut, a haunting reminder of the ticking clock. She faced an agonizing, impossible choice, a crucible of ethics and raw survival instinct. To back off now, to prioritize their safety, would almost certainly mean the loss of the cub, a defeat she could barely contemplate. But to risk a direct, unshielded confrontation with a highly agitated, partially sedated Black Panther was an act of almost suicidal bravery, a gamble with stakes too high to measure. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of calculated risks and desperate prayers. This was it, the 4-second countdown. The entire rescue boiled down to this precise, terrifying interval. Dr. Reed's internal calculus was rapid, brutal. She weighed the potential trajectory of Nala's charge against the time it would take to reach the cub, the effectiveness of the lingering sedative against Nala's innate speed and ferocity. Every second was an eternity. She pictured Nala's powerful claws, her fangs, the sheer crushing force of her body. The thought alone was paralyzing, yet she pushed it aside. The cub's faint cries echoed in her mind, overriding every instinct for self-preservation. This wasn't about cowardice or courage anymore. It was about a promise made to a species, a dedication to life itself. This was her final, desperate assessment, a decision forged in the crucible of impossible circumstances. A cold, stark realization washed over her, chilling her to the bone, yet imbuing her with a strange, fierce resolve. The only way, the absolute only way, to save the cub was to put herself directly, irrevocably, in harm's way. She had to become the focal point, the ultimate distraction, hoping against all rational thought, that Nala's maternal instinct to shield her cub would somehow, miraculously, prevent a direct, fatal attack on her. It was an ultimate sacrifice, a colossal risk that bordered on madness, yet no other option presented itself. She would offer herself as the primary threat, hoping to trigger the panther's protective rather than destructive response. Through her comms, the frantic voices of her team crackled, urgent and laced with fear. "Dr. Reed, no, do not engage. It's too dangerous." Mark's voice, usually steady, was now strained with panic. "Evelyn, fall back. We'll find another way." Her sanctuary manager, a man who had seen beasts of the savannah in their most fearsome states, pleaded, "Please, doctor, your life is too valuable." But Dr. Reed was resolute. Their pleas, though heartfelt, faded into the background, drowned out by the internal roar of her purpose. Her decision was made, etched in stone. She took a deep, shaky breath, her gaze fixed on the malevolent emerald gleam of Nala's eyes. There was no turning back. Dr. Reed stepped out from the cover of the dense thorn bushes, her movements slow and deliberate, every muscle in her body screaming for caution. Her eyes, unwavering, fixed on Nala across the clearing. She held no weapon, her hands open, palms facing outward, an ancient gesture of peace in a world where peace was often a fleeting illusion. She tried to project calm, a non-threatening presence, though her pulse hammered a frantic cadence against her eardrums. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to find cover, but the image of the whimpering cub, growing weaker by the minute, burned in her mind, overriding her primal fear. She was prepared for the worst, a silent resolve hardening her gaze. Nala's head snapped towards Dr. Reed, her emerald eyes narrowing to slits of pure predatory focus. A low, guttural growl rumbled deep in her chest, a sound that vibrated through the ground and chilled Dr. Reed to the bone. The panther's body tensed, hindquarters lowering, front paws digging into the dry earth, a picture of coiled power ready to unleash itself. The previous dart, though subtle, had only agitated her further, sharpening her senses rather than dulling them. She was a mother defending her young, and Dr. Reed was now the clearest, most immediate threat. A tense silence fell over the savannah, thick and suffocating. The buzzing of insects, the distant calls of birds, all seemed to fade into an oppressive quiet. Only the thumping of Dr. Reed's own heart and the menacing rumble from Nala broke the stillness. The two figures, woman and panther, stood locked in an ancient standoff, predator and protector. Dr. Reed's mind raced, a desperate prayer forming on her lips. She thought of her years dedicated to this unforgiving yet beautiful land, the countless animals she had saved, the risks she had taken. This wasn't merely a job, it was a calling, a deeply ingrained purpose that now demanded the ultimate sacrifice of self-preservation. Everything she had learned, every ounce of her courage, led her to this moment. With agonizing slowness, Dr. Reed began to move, not directly towards Nala, but in a gradual, arcing path. Her steps were measured, her gaze never leaving the panther's eyes. She was positioning herself, not as an aggressor, but as a deliberate obstruction. She aimed to place herself squarely between Nala's cub and the only viable escape route from the thicket. It was a risky maneuver, designed to create a visual and psychological barrier. By doing so, she wasn't overtly threatening Nala, but rather presenting herself to the panther's maternal instincts as a larger, more immediate threat to the cub's perceived safety. The aim was to force Nala's protective instincts to focus squarely on her, diverting the panther's attention from the vulnerable cub directly behind her. Nala's eyes darted frantically between Dr. Reed and her hidden cub. The subtle effects of the dart, The low-dose sedative, while not powerful enough to incapacitate her, created a slight moment of hesitation, a minuscule delay in her otherwise lightning-fast reactions. This fraction of a second was Dr. Reed's only ally. Nala's raw, powerful maternal instinct, while demanding a direct, furious defense of her offspring, was subtly manipulated by Dr. Reed's calculated movements. The Panther, in this critical moment, was being forced to process a complex threat, an intruder who was not directly assaulting her cub, but rather positioning herself to potentially cut off her cub's escape. Nala didn't want to leave her cub exposed for even a moment, and Dr. Reed's presence now dictated that her first move would have to be one of strategic defense, not outright attack. The seconds stretched into an eternity. In that agonizing 4-second window, a chasm of primal instinct and calculated risk, Nala was forced to choose. Her entire being, each twitch of her powerful muscles, each flicker in her emerald eyes, screamed an ancient imperative: protect her cub at all costs. Dr. Reed's deliberate, unthreatening posture, her slow arc, and the perceived blocking of the escape route had subtly shifted the dynamic. Nala saw the human not as a clear attacker to be mauled instantly, but as a looming strategic threat to her offspring's well-being. The narrative had twisted. The immediate danger was now the human's presence, not necessarily her direct assault. This subtle recalibration in Nala's predatory brain, a momentary processing delay exacerbated by the dart, was Dr. Reed's only hope. The Panther hesitated, her head swiveling, assessing the new threat vector. She perceived Dr. Reed as a wedge, a barrier between her cub and freedom, a potential obstruction that demanded a different form of protective action. And then, with a movement that was both terrifying and utterly primal, Nala made her choice. Instead of launching herself at Dr. Reed in a furious, direct mauling attack, the Panther executed a swift, powerful sidestep. She didn't retreat, nor did she advance aggressively on the veterinarian. Instead, she moved to position herself between Dr. Reed and her hidden cub, a formidable, living shield. Her massive, sleek black body now formed an impenetrable wall, her stance wide, head low, eyes still locked on Dr. Reed, but her primary focus was unequivocally on physically interposing herself. This was not a retreat. It was a profound declaration of maternal defense, a decision to physically safeguard her young by becoming the ultimate barrier. It was a subtle yet monumental shift from an offensive strike to a defensive posture, a clear indication that her primal drive to protect had manifested as shielding rather than solely as mauling. She had chosen to stand between. This unexpected shift, this profound act of shielding, created the barest, most fleeting window of opportunity. The cub, previously hidden deep within the thicket, was now momentarily exposed, its small, vulnerable form briefly visible from a different angle as Nala adjusted her position. Nala's entire focus was now squarely on Dr. Reed, the perceived and immediate threat, her body language screaming defiance and protection. This was the moment Dr. Reed had gambled everything on. This was the signal. From his concealed position, Dr. Reed's assistant, a man of incredible agility and nerves of steel, recognized the prearranged cue. With a silent, blindingly fast surge, he sprang from cover. He was a blur of motion, carrying a smaller, more refined medical kit, specifically designed for rapid, precise interventions. His training and instinct took over. He moved with the grace and speed of a gazelle, covering the short distance to the exposed cub in what felt like a single breath. His hands were practiced, efficient. He swiftly administered the necessary medication, a potent antibiotic and anti-inflammatory, to the tiny, whimpering cub. It was a matter of seconds. A syringe plunged, medication injected, and then he was moving again, retreating just as rapidly as he had arrived. Nala, still fixated on Dr. Reed, roared in a sudden, furious realization. Her protective shield had been subtly bypassed. Her decision to physically interpose herself, meant to safeguard her cub, had inadvertently created the very opportunity for intervention. She tried to lunge, a guttural snarl tearing from her throat, her black fur bristling with indignant rage. But the assistant was already gone, a fleeting shadow disappearing back into the bush. The lingering effects of the dart, though minor, also played their part, slightly hindering her explosive speed, preventing her from executing a successful counterattack. The brief, critical window had closed, but not before the life-saving intervention had been delivered. The fate of the cub and the success of their desperate gamble now hung in the balance. The cub was successfully treated, the delicate procedure completed with breathtaking speed and precision. The small dosage of medication, specifically chosen for its rapid action, began its work almost immediately. Within what felt like mere heartbeats, the cub's shallow, ragged breathing began to steady, a rhythmic rise and fall replacing the frantic gasps. The faint whimpers that had so tormented Dr. Reed and her team ceased, replaced by the soft, innocent sounds of a sleeping infant. Nala, still agitated, her body taut and ready to spring, observed the swift intervention with a mix of fury and confusion. Yet, as the frantic energy in her cub's tiny body subsided, as its distress visibly lessened, a subtle shift occurred within the powerful feline. The immediate, searing panic in her eyes began to recede, replaced by a cautious, almost bewildered curiosity. The most acute danger had passed, and the team, knowing their presence would only prolong the tension, executed a swift and silent retreat, carefully melting back into the savannah, leaving Nala and her now recovering cub to find their peace. From a safe distance, concealed behind a cluster of acacia trees, Dr. Reed and her team watched through binoculars, the drone hovering silently overhead, providing a wider perspective. Their collective breath was held, a fragile hope blossoming in their chests. Nala, after a moment of wary appraisal, slowly lowered herself beside her cub. Her powerful head, so recently a harbinger of fury, now gently nudged the small form. She began to lick her cub with tender, reassuring strokes, her rough tongue a comforting balm. A visible sigh of relief rippled through the team, a wave of exhaustion and profound gratitude. The immediate threat was gone, replaced by the quiet, ancient tableau of mother and child. It was a moment of profound beauty, a stark reminder of the raw, untamed love that had driven Nala's desperate defense. In the ensuing weeks, the cub, now named Quito, meaning precious in Swahili, made a full and remarkable recovery. His limp subsided, his appetite returned, and his playful spirit emerged, a testament to the timely intervention and Dr. Reed's courageous gamble. Nala, though she remained the reclusive and fiercely independent panther she had always been, slowly allowed a degree of monitored observation. The drone, now a familiar buzzing in the distance, became less a threat and more a curiosity. She watched it, sometimes with a flick of her ear, sometimes with a dismissive glance, but never again with the same desperate aggression. It was a remarkable outcome, a testament to the fact that the intervention, traumatic as it had been, had ultimately saved her offspring, allowing a new life to flourish in the wild. Dr. Reed often reflected on that day, the memory burned into her very soul. The immense risk, the chilling proximity to the panther's raw power, the agonizing 4-second countdown. It all served as a constant, visceral reminder of the power of maternal love, a force that transcended species and defied logic. But it also underscored the sacred trust involved in wildlife conservation. Her work was not just about saving individual animals. It was about protecting entire ecosystems, about understanding and respecting the delicate balance of nature, even when that balance demanded the most dangerous and unconventional choices. The confrontation with Nala became a powerful narrative not just of human courage, but of the dedication of those who fight tirelessly to protect endangered species, and the complex, often dangerous choices they face daily. It emphasized the fine, often blurred line between necessary human intervention and the inviolable sanctity of natural instinct, a line Dr. Reed had walked with unwavering resolve. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the heart of the wild. If Nala's story resonated with you, if it stirred your spirit and deepened your appreciation for the natural world, please consider subscribing to our channel for more impactful stories like this one. Give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what aspects of wildlife conservation you find most compelling. For our next adventure, we'll be exploring the hidden lives of nocturnal predators in the Amazon rainforest.